Good afternoon, Debrata. Are you able to hear me out? Yeah, welcome, Debrata. You may start the session.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Now the topic is understanding malware analysis. So I have organized my presentation like this: general description of malware, types of malware, and types of how the malware analysis is done. So I have focused on three types of malware analysis. One is static analysis, another is dynamic analysis, and another is AI-based approach. So with that, I start with the definition of malware. It is basically a short form of malicious software. এটা কি করে ক্রস করে দাও ক্রস করতে yeah yeah so the definition of malware is it is basically short form of malicious software. A malware is a software used or created to disrupt any computer operation, gather sensitive information, or gain access to any private computer systems. It can appear in the form of code, scripts, or active content, or any other software, even DLL or exe, and all like that. So here are the some examples of malware I have given: packer.malware.nsnt.ad, Win32, Netsky, like that. According to Sophos, 86% of the reported attacks is a spyware. So how do you understand that your system is infected by a malware? The system might be unstable and respond slowly, as malware might be utilizing the system resources. Unknown new executables can be found on the system. Unexpected network traffic to sites that you did not expect to connect. It may appear. Also, alerted system settings like browser homepage without your consent. Random pop-ups may be shown as advertisements. Recent additions to the set are alerts shown by fake security applications which you never installed. Messages such as your computer is infected are displayed, and it asks the user to register the program to remove detected threats. So when a program modifies another program or replicates itself through a network or a file without affects the system without user's consent, allows an unauthorized person to take control over a remote system, sends personal or confidential information to a remote system without user consent, then that software or that DLL must be a malware. It opens a port for listening in on a local machine to accept commands from a control server, records keystrokes and sends this information to remote servers, connects to suspicious remote servers, downloads executable files from suspicious servers, copies itself to multiple locations, makes unauthorized changes to the system. It modifies a protected system setting, modifies a register setting used for launching programs, inject code into another program, sends data to a system in order to disrupt normal functioning. So malware can be classified into different forms broadly. One is virus. What is a virus? It is a program or piece of code that is loaded on your computer without your knowledge and runs against your wishes. Virus can also replicate themselves. All computer viruses are man-made. Virus copy themselves to other disks to spread to other computers. Some examples of the virus are macrovirus, boot virus, logic bomb virus, directory virus, resident virus, etc. Another malware type is worms. A computer worm is a self-replicating computer program. It uses a network to send copies of itself to other nodes, that means computers on other network. It may do so without any user intervention. It does not need to attach itself to any existing program. Example of some computer worms are SQL Slammer, the Storm worm, the Morris worm, etc. Another type of malware may be Trojan. The Trojan horse program has the appearance of having a useful and desired function. A Trojan horse neither replicates nor copies itself, but causes damage or compromises the security of the computer. A Trojan horse must be sent by someone or carried by another program, or may arrive in the form of any program or software of some sort. These are often used to capture your logins and passwords. Some examples of the Trojan horses are remote access Trojans, that is called RATs, backdoor Trojans, IRC Trojans, keylogging Trojans, etc. Another type of malware is spyware. It's a type of malware installed on the computers that collects information about users without their knowledge. The presence of spyware is typically hidden from the user and can be difficult to detect. Spyware programs lurk on your computers to steal the important information like your passwords, logins, and other personal identification information, and then send it off to someone else. Another thing is the Jumbi program that takes control of your computer and use it and its internet connection to attack other computers and networks or to perform other criminal activities.
Sir, we are not getting your voice.
Details.
Your voice was not there in between. You can just kindly repeat.
From which part, sir?
From phishing only you start.
From phishing only I will start. Okay. Yeah. So
From
another
phishing
kind of
only you
malicious
can
activity is another malicious activity is phishing. So phishing is a fraudulent attempt to obtain sensitive information or data such as username, passwords, and credit card details on other sensitive details, typically carried out by email spoofing or instant messaging or text messaging. So phishing often directs user to enter personal information at the fake website, which matches the look and feel of the legitimate site. So any website, basically a fake website is made which looks like the original one, and it provokes the users to enter the password and all the sensitive information, and it steals the information. Spam is email that you did not request or don't want. One person spam is another person useful newsletter or sale ad. Spamming is a common way to spread virus, trojans, and like very common word, it is spam. Another type of malicious activity or a malicious software is adware, short form of advertising supported software. It's a type of malware that automatically delivers advertisements. Common examples of adware include pop-up ads on websites and advertisements that are displayed by software. Often, software and applications offer free versions that come bundled with adware. So some examples of adware are Firewall, AppReach, Dollar Revenue, Gator, Deskcat, etc. So another very popular type of malicious software is or malware is ransomware, which is a form of malware that essentially holds a computer system captive while demanding a ransom. Malware restricts user access to the computer either by encrypting files on the hard drive or locking down the malware, basically this ransomware restricts user access to the computer either by encrypting files on the hard drive or locking down the system and displaying messages that are intended to force the user to pay the malware creator to remove the restrictions and regain access to their computer. So some very popular examples of the ransomware are WannaCry, CryptoLock, Petya, Bad Rabbit, Tesla Crypt, Locky, etc. So another one is backdoors that allow unauthorized access to a compromised system by opening a port on the system. This creates a pathway for hackers to control the compromised system by sending commands of the malicious nature. NetBus and back orifice are some of the well-known examples of backdoors which enable unauthorized people to access user systems over the internet without his or her knowledge. Hack tool is used by a hacker to attack and exploit a system to gain unauthorized access to system resources. It attempts to gain information about the system after bypassing security mechanisms that are inherent to the system. Netcat is an example of hack tool. Infection vector refers to the spreading mechanism used by the malware. So it can infect the boot sector, infecting the master boot record of the physical disk. File infection can be done. Email worms can be sent. Parasitic infectors with the file share can be spread. Network worms through vulnerabilities can be sent, which can affect the network and which can spread through the network. There are some examples. IRC, P2P network, removable media, which are affected. Damages. So why malware is basically dangerous to us, dangerous to the cyber security world? Because there are different points that arises with the malware attack. The first one is, the very important one is data loss. Many viruses and trojans will attempt to delete files or wipe hard drives when activated. But even if you catch the infection early, you may have to delete the infected files. So data loss is one of the obvious reasons that we should use anti-malware system. There are maybe many sensitive information in government officials, in army, in any defense sector or any R&D sector. So data loss, any malicious criminal activity persons can do the data loss with that. Account theft is another damage that is done by the malicious software or malware. Many types of malware include keylogger functions designed to steal accounts and passwords from their targets. This can give the malware authors, that means malware creators, access to any of the user's online accounts, including email servers from which the hacker can launch new attacks. So keylogger basically is a program that is installed without your knowledge in your system, and whenever you type the anything, the keystrokes are recorded in a particular file, and from time to time it is sent, and it is sent to the malware creators, and it steals the information. Botnets is another type of thing. Many types of malware also subvert control over the user's computer, turning it into a bot or zombie. Hackers build networks of these commanded computers using their combined processing power of tasks like cracking password files and sending out bulk emails. It's an army of computers that is used by the hacker. The program installed is called botnets. So there are different financial laws also. If a hacker gains access to a credit card or bank account via a keylogger, he can then use that information to run up charges or drain that account. Given the popularity of the online banking and the bill payment services, a hacker who managed to secrete a keylogger on a user system for a full month may gain access to the user's entire financial portfolio, allowing him to do as much as damage as possible. So how can you, the question is, how can you protect your computer from this malware? So far, whatever I have discussed, what is malware, types of the damages, what is done by the malware. But now the $1 million question is, how can you protect your computer, which is the target of us. So we have to install protection software. Practice caution while working with the files from unknown or questionable sources. Do not open email if you don't recognize the sender. Do not click on the link if you don't know the authenticity of the source, which is a very common methodology used by the hackers or malicious software creators to access control of your devices. Don't download files only from authentic internet sites. Install firewall. Scan your hard drive for viruses. Anti-malware program. What is anti-malware program? Anti-malware program is used to prevent, detect, remove computer viruses, worms, Trojan horses, or any other types of malwares. Examples of
Devrata, your voice is stopped. Hello.
Sound is not
Sir,
coming.
your voice is also stopped.
Devrata, your sound
Sir,
is
your
not coming.
voice is not coming.
Devrata, hello. 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 Devrata, your voice stopped in between. You may go to previous slide from phishing. Hello.
Devrata, sound is not coming, Devrata.
antivirus is a protective software designed to defend your computer against malicious software. In order to be an effective defense, the antivirus software needs to run in the background at all times and should be kept updated so it recognizes new versions of the malicious software. So this updation, this antivirus updation is the most important one. You have installed your antivirus system, but you are not updating daily, then your computer may be at threat. Why this updation is necessary? We will be discussing this while understanding the types of malware analysis in our later slides. So some examples of the antivirus program. There are very famous antivirus companies. We all know that Norton Antivirus, AVJ, Kaspersky, Avast, PC Clean, McAfee, Avira, etc. So another program is called anti-spyware program. Anti-spyware is a type of program designed to prevent and detect unwanted spyware program installations and remove those programs if installed.
Devabrata sir, again your voice is stopped.
Host team, please stop. Pause.
Benefit of the malware analysis is that it helps incident responders and security analysts. It assesses the damage from a security threat, identify the source of attack, identify the vulnerabilities of the malware, its exploitation level, and preparation to patch accordingly. Practically, break incidents by the level of security threat, reveal hidden indicators of compromise that need to be blocked, improve the efficiency of the indicators of the compromise, alert and notify, enrich your context when hunting for threat. So now, this is the prime mechanism. There are basically many types of malware analysis. Broadly, it can be classified under three basic categories. One is static analysis, one is dynamic analysis. In the recent era, with the advent of artificial intelligence, AI-based analysis for malware detection has become very popular. So we'll also be discussing on that. So now our first analytical method is static analysis. So for doing any malware analysis, for static analysis, we have to pursue the following task. What is the task? There are 6 major tasks that have to be done for doing static analysis: identification of the file type, fingerprinting, multiple antivirus scanning, extracting strings, determining file obfuscation, inspecting the PE header inspection. So let us start from the first task. The first task is determining the file type. So determining the file type of a suspect binary will help you identify the malware's target operating system, whether the malware targets Windows, Linux, or any other OS, and its architecture. That means whether it is attacking 32-bit or 64-bit platforms. Suspect binary file has a type of portable executable P, which is the file format for Windows executables, that is exe, DLL, sys, DRB, COM, OCX, and so on. A file signature is a unique sequence of bytes that is written to the file's header. Different files have different signatures, which can be used to identify the type of the file. The Windows executable files, also called P files, such as the files ending with exe, dll.com, etc., have a file signature of MZ or a hexadecimal characters 4D5A in the first 2 bytes of the file. So whenever you analyze the portable executable header, PE header, you can really understand whether it is a genuine or it is something else. So there are different methods of identification of file type. So first, we will be using the identification of the file type using manual method. So if you are doing it manually, how to do it? The manual method of determining the file type is to look for the file signature by opening it in a hex editor. If you have a hex editor, you open the file and you see file signature. A hex editor is a tool that allows an examiner to inspect each byte of the file. Most hex editors provide many functionalities that help in analysis of a file. So next, if you are using the file type using different tools, then there are some certain specified tools that you can use for determining the file type of a particular suspected file. On Linux system, this can be achieved by using the file utility. On Windows, CFF Explorer is a tool that you can use. The persons who are able to write programming scripts, Python scripts, they can use the Python magic module that can determine the file type. So next task, the fingerprinting the malware. Fingerprinting involves generating the cryptographic hash values of the suspect binary based on its file content. The cryptographic hashing algorithms such as MD5, SHA-1 or SHA-256 are considered the de facto standard for generating file hashes for malware specimen. So generating cryptographic hash using, so how you are going to generate cryptographic hash? There are you can use the direct tools, or you can use also in Python. So on Linux system, the file hashes can be generated using the MD5 SAM, SHA-256 SAM, SH1 SAM utilities. So there are different utilities. You can use this to generate cryptographic hash. For Windows, various tools for generating file hashes can be found online. One of the tool is HashMyFile. So it is the website. If you want to write your own script for generating cryptographic hash in Python, so it is also possible using the hashlib module, which is open source. As Python is open source, so this module also open source. You can install it in your Python and you can write a small script and you can find the cryptographic hash of any suspected file or any file. The another task is for static analysis, you have to do multiple antivirus scanning. Scanning the suspect binary with multiple antivirus scanners helps in determining whether malicious code signature exists for the suspect file. The signature name for a particular file can provide additional information about the file and its capabilities. By visiting the respective antivirus vendor websites or searching for the signature in search engines, you can yield further detail about the suspect file. Scanning the suspect binary with VirusTotal, it is a method you are scanning with this. VirusTotal is a popular web-based malware scanning service. You can use it. You can use VirusTotal public API. VirusTotal provides scripting capabilities via its public API. It allows you to automate file. You can write your script which can use the VirusTotal public API and can generate your own scanning system, scanning code. The next task is for static analysis is extracting strings. Strings are ASCII and Unicode printable sequences of characters embedded within a file. Extracting strings can give clues about the program functionality and indicators associated with a suspected binary. Strings extracted from the binary can contain references to file names, URLs, domain names, IP addresses, attack commands, registry keys, and so on. Strings do not give a clear picture of the purpose and capability of a file. They can give a hint about the malware capable of doing some malicious activities. So there are different string extraction tools. You can use different string extraction tools to extract strings from a suspect binary. You can use the strings utility on Linux system. The strings command by default extracts the ASCII strings that are at least 4 characters long. With -a option, it is possible to extract strings for the entire file. ASCII strings extracted from the malicious binary. So reference to an IP address. This indicates that when this malware is executed, it probably establishes a connection with that IP address. Malware specimens also use Unicode, that is 2 byte per character strings, Unicode strings, to get useful information from that binary. Sometimes you need to extract both ASCII and Unicode strings. To extract Unicode strings using the strings command, use the -el option on Windows. PE Studio is a handy tool that displays both ASCII and Unicode strings. So if you are using in Windows, you can use PE Studio tool. Sometimes these strings are obfuscated using clause. So you have to decode these obfuscated strings using clause. Most of the times, malware authors use simple string obfuscation technique to avoid detection. They just put some variant, some small changes in the code to change the signature so that it can evade the malware detector system. And these obfuscated strings will not show up in the strings utility or other string extraction tools. FireEye Labs obfuscated string solver FLOSS is a tool designed to identify and extract obfuscated strings from malware automatically. You can download it from the GitHub. So you have to determine the file obfuscation. Obfuscation is used basically by malware authors to protect the inner working of the malware from security researchers and malware analysts and reverse engineers. These obfuscation techniques make it difficult to detect and analyze the binary. Extracting the strings from such binary results in very fewer strings, so most of the things are obscure. Malware authors often use programs as packers and cryptors to obfuscate their files to evade detection from the security products such as antivirus and to threat analysis. So popular packer is UPX. So this is the site upx.github.io. You can go there and download that. Determining the detecting the file obfuscation, you can use exeinfo-p. In Windows platform, you can use a freeware tool such as exeinfo-p. This website is given here. It has a easy to use GUI. Other tools for packer detections are there like TRID, TRID-net, RDG packer detector, PID, etc. Also, there in open source system, if you want to do some Python-based scripting, packerid.py one script file is there. So you can download it from the GitHub and you can use it for detecting the file obfuscation. The next task is inspecting the PE header information. The PE file format is used by the Windows executable files such as exe, DLL, sys, OX, OCX, DRV, and such files are generally called portable executable files. When an executable is compiled, it includes a header, PE header, which describes its structure. When binary is executed, the operating system loader reads the information from the PE header and loads the binary content from the file into the memory. The PE header contains the information such as where the executable needs to be loaded into memory, the address where the execution starts, the list of the libraries or functions on which the application relies on, and the resources used by the binary. Inspecting the file dependencies and imports. Malware interacts with the file, registry, network, and so on. To perform such interactions, malware frequently depends on functions exposed by the operating system. Windows exports most of its functions called a particular term API, Application Programmer Interface, required for these interactions in the dynamic link library, which is popularly called as DLL files. Executables import and call these functions typically from various DLLs that provide different functionality. The functions that an executable imports from other files, mostly DLLs, are called imported functions or imports. Inspecting the DLLs that a malware relies upon and the API functions that it imports from the DLLs can give an idea about the functionality and capability of the malware and what to anticipate during its execution. The file dependencies in Windows executables are stored in the import table of the the file dependencies in the Windows executable are stored in the import table of the PE file structure. There is one tool, just I have said, PE Studio, you can use to find these file dependencies and imports. There are some particular drawback also for this approach. Sometimes malware can load a DLL explicitly during runtime using API calls, such as load library or LDRL load DLL. It can resolve the function address using the get process address API. Information about the DLLs loaded during runtime will not be present in the import table and the PE file, and therefore will not be displayed by the tool. So this is one of the approach. For that, what you need is code analysis. Information about an API function and what it can be determined about any API function of the Windows, it can be determined from the open library, MSDN, Microsoft Developer Network. So a particular malware analyst should go through these particular and what is its functionalities to have a better idea of these API function calls and DLLs. Inspecting exports. This is another part that we have to do. The executable and DLL can export functions which can be used by other programs. Typically, a DLL exports functions that are imported by the executable. A DLL, basically the nature of the DLL is that it cannot run on its own and depends on a host process for executing its code. An attacker often creates a DLL. An attacker often creates a DLL that exports functions containing malicious functionality. To run the malicious functions within the DLL, it is somehow made to be loaded by a process that calls these malicious functions. In Python, PE file can also be used. There is a module, PE file. It can also be used for scripting to enumerate the export functions through Python scripting. Sometimes export function names may not be always give an idea of malware's capabilities because an attacker may use random or fake export names to mislead your analysis or throw you off the track. This is also a trick that is sometimes used by the attackers. Another task for inspecting the PE header information is examining the compilation timestamp. The PE header contains the information that specifies when the binary was compiled. Examining this field can give an idea of when the malware was first created. This information can be useful in building a timeline of the attack campaign. It is also possible the attacker modifies the timestamp to prevent an analyst from knowing the actual timestamp. Another task is examining the PE resources. The resources required by the executable file, such as icons, menu, dialog, and strings, are stored in the resource section. .rsrc caption is there of an executable file. Often attackers store information such as additional binary, decoy documents, and configuration data in the resource section, or examining the resource can reveal valuable information about a binary. So resource hacker is a tool that with using it, you can examine, view, and extract the resources from a suspect binary. So after this, I'm going to another approach, which is called dynamic analysis. For static analysis, the basic difference between static and dynamic analysis is that you do not need to run the code in static analysis, but you are examining the code, or you are following this task for static analysis to analyze the suspected binary file. In the dynamic analysis, what you have to do, you have to run the executable, suspected binary executable in a safe environment in VM or VMware, so that you can come to know, you have an idea of what this suspected file does. So dynamic analysis, also it is called behavioral analysis, involves analyzing a sample by executing it in an isolated environment. I have already told that in a VM or VMware machine, and monitoring its activities, interaction, and effect on the system. When performing this dynamic analysis, you will be executing the malware specimen. You need to have a safe and secure lab environment to prevent your production system from being infected. So there are different tasks. What monitorings you have to perform? System and network monitoring. When the malware is executed, it can interact with the system in various ways and perform different activities. For example, when executed a malware, it can spawn a child process, drop additional files on the file system, create registry keys and values for its persistence, and download other components or take commands from the command and control server, CC2 server. So during dynamic analysis, when malware is executed, you have to carry out various monitoring activities. These are the monitoring activities in a brief: process monitoring, file system monitoring, registry monitoring, and network monitoring. So process inspection with process hacker. So process hacker is an open source multi-purpose tool that helps in monitoring the system resources. It is a great tool for examining the process running on the system and to inspect the process attributes. It can also be used to explore services, network connections, disk activity, and so on. Once the malware specimen is executed, this tool can help you identify the newly created malware process, its process name, and process ID. So determining system interaction with process, how? Process monitor. It is an advanced monitoring tool that shows the real-time interaction of the process with the file system, registry, and process thread activity. You can use Noriban Python script that works in conjunction with the process monitor, helps in collecting and analyzing, reporting runtime indicators of the malware. This is an open source. The persons who are writing own script, they can use it. The next is capturing networking traffic with Wireshark. When the malware is executed, you will want to capture the network traffic generated as a result of running the malware. This will help you understand the communication channel used by the malware, and will also help in determining the network-based indicators. Wireshark is a packet sniffer that allows you to capture the network traffic. Simulating services with INetSim. Most malware, when executed, reach out to the internet, and it is not a good idea to allow the malware to connect to the internet. INetSim is a free Linux-based software suite for simulating the standard internet services like DNS, HTTP, HTTPS, and so on. INetSim can log communications, and it can also be configured to respond to the HTTPS requests and return any files based on its extensions. So basically what
Sir, we are not getting your voice.
দেখছি দাঁড়া আমি তো এ করছি এখন এখন পাচ্ছ দেখো তো হ্যালো
Ah, your voice is coming.
ওকে ওকে so you have so this is basically the steps you have to follow for dynamic analysis. One is the reverting to the clean snapshot, running the monitoring or dynamic analysis tool, executing the malware specimen with administrative privilege. Stopping the monitoring tool involves the terminating the monitoring tools after the malware binary is executed for a specified time period, and after that you have to analyze the result. You have to collect the data reports from monitoring tools and analyzing them to determine malware's behavior and functionality. Another important aspect is the dynamic link library analysis. A dynamic link library analysis library is a model that contains functions called export functions or exports that can be used by another program such as executable or DLL. An executable can use the functions implemented in a DLL by importing it in the form of DLL. The Windows operating system contains many DLLs that export various functions called API or application programming interfaces. The functions contained in these DLLs are used by the process to interact with the file system, process, registry, network, and the GUI. DLLs used by the attackers, it is a very common methodology because a DLL cannot be executed by double clicking. DLL needs a host process to run. It cannot run on its own. It needs a host process to run. By distributing the malicious code as a DLL, a malware author can load his or her into any process. This technique gives the attacker capability to hide a malware action, and all the malicious activity performed by the malware will appear to originate from the host process. This is a trick. Injecting a DLL into a already running process provides the attacker with the capability to persist on the system. When a DLL is loaded by a process into its memory space, the DLL will have access to the entire process memory space, thereby giving it the ability to manipulate process functionality. So analysis of a DLL can be done using run DLL 32exe. It can be used to launch a DLL and invoke functions exported from the DLL. CFF tool can be used to analyze this DLL. So analysis of the DLL can also be done with a remote DLL. This is a tool. It allows to inject a DLL into any running process on the system. Virus can also scan new malware with a up-to-date virus scanner. Someone else may have already discovered and documented the program you are investing. If the code is not sensitive, consider it to submitting to VirusTotal. It is a very good site. You can check any file there. So after this dynamic analysis, I am just giving some snapshots. This is PE view snapshot. PE view snapshot. These are the PE view snapshots. This is resource hacker tool snapshot. Process monitor is an open source tool which is used. Another other malware analysis open source tools are there: Port Explorer, Malcode Analysis Analyst Pack, Paros, Fiddler, Norman Sandbox. These are the some open source tools. Just I have documented it. Google Rapid. Hello.
Continue.
Yeah, in recent years, artificial intelligence and malware machine learning technologies have evolved tremendously and emerged as one of the most promising technique to detect the never seen before malware by studying the behavior of the various samples. Machine learning is a very handy tool nowadays that can use the learning mechanism from the past sample and develop a model which can be used for any unknown file to be classified whether it is a malware or a benign file. So how the machine learning works, this is the general flow. There are two steps in any machine learning based or artificial intelligence based malware analysis. One is training phase, another is testing phase. So here, if you have the sufficient number of data files of the both the malwares and benign files, you can use this as a training file. After that, you can extract the features from that. You can use learning algorithms, and you can develop your modifier or classifier. Whenever a testing file comes or a unknown file comes, you extract the features that have been used to develop the model, and after extracting the feature, you feed those features into the classifier, and the classifier will automatically give you result whether it is a benign file or a malware file. This is the general data flow. This is the data intake, data transformation, model training, model testing, and after that, when the training and testing happens, after that model is deployed, and if an unknown file comes, you can use your model and to classify it into benign or malware. So in the machine learning stage, the most important thing is that feature extraction and feature engineering. So in brief, I am just giving the overview. What is feature engineering? Machine learning algorithms can learn the patterns from a fixed length feature vectors. Feature vectors are nothing but some parameters that has been extracted from the files, which are used as the features that quantify those files. Suppose we have extracted the features S1, S2 up to Sn from those malicious and benign files. We have developed a feature set, and after using this feature vector, we can develop our machine learning model. The baseline method of extracting features from a sequence is to identify all the distinct elements found in the sequence. The sequence can be represented as a binary vector of the same length as the term dictionary S in the previous thing, such as each feature in the vector signifies the presence or absence of the corresponding dictionary term in the sequence. The resulting feature vector can also be represented by this thing, where BS1 is 1 if S contains at least one instance of SI, and 0 otherwise N is the size of the S. This method has been used for sequence of code bytes, API calls, and etc., which we are going to discuss in the later slides. One methodology we will be using, in generally it is used in the feature extraction, frequency feature extraction. In this feature extraction method, the count of occurrence of a particular feature in the sequence is used instead of its just presence or absence. Mathematically, this vector VSF contains the frequency of each element S1. Another another metric we can use, that is called TF-IDF, term frequency inverse document frequency, which is also employed to generate vectors from the sequences.
Sir, you are not audible. Sir, you are not audible. Devbrato sir, can you hear me?
Your voice is not coming. Devbrato.
For unigram, the value of the n is 1. For bigram, the value of the n is 2. For trigram, value of n is 3. And for 4gram, value of n is 4. That means from the
Hello,
text file which has been
hello,
converted. Hello.
hello, Devabrata.
Hello.
Actually, we are running short of time. You may conclude, and there are a few questions have come on the chat panel also. There are 5-6 questions you have to answer.
I think I can share my email ID, so I can answer those in the email also.
That's up to you, but a few questions if you can take, that will be better. And as our next speaker is also in that line, you may
So,
find
so
out
how
in
many
5
time is
minutes.
left?
Our time is
Okay,
already
okay.
over. You may take 5 minutes more.
Okay. Thank you. So basically, there are another approaches which is called assembly engram features. That is nothing. From the assembly instruction, you apply the engram technique, and you just use the unigram or bigram or trigram or fourgram assembly instructions, and you develop the feature vector. And also you can apply the engram techniques on DLL function call feature. So engram DLL function is a sequence of n DLL functions. So combining this binary engram, assembly engram, and DLL engram features, we constitute the feature vector. And after these feature vectors, we basically go for the feature selections. That means it is an important step, and which feature is most important we have to identify. For that, there are different machine learnings and statistical methods. We can use information gain Gini index. We can apply on these feature vectors and to find the most important features. A subset of the most important, we can go for our various machine learning algorithms, that k nearest neighbor, support vector machine, naive Bayes, and J for a decision tree and random forest. So there are different malware families also. Just I have listed it, and after this there are different data mining tools. So time is very short, so I'll just conclude it being an overview. Be given an overview. Bayes theorem is basically needed for developing Bayes classifier, which is a classifier. Basically, it is a probabilistic classifier. The feature vector we have constructed, it is fed into the Bayes classifier, and based on a probabilistic approach, we can tell for a particular file what is the probability of this file being into malware, or what is the probability of this file of being a benign file. So the different ingredients for Bayes classifier needs the conditional probability, marginal probability, joint probability, conditional probability. And another aspect is that for developing this Bayes classifier, if it is a multivariate case, that means if you are dealing with the more than one features, that means more than one parameters, you have to go for the multivariate class conditional density. That is another probabilistic approach. Next, another data mining tool is that artificial neural network. Basically, this is also another machine learning model. The input is those features which we have constructed in the feature engineering space. We can also feed this into the artificial neural network. Basically, this artificial neural network is nothing. It mimics the human brain, and the mathematical structure is like this. Mathematical structure of artificial intelligence, of artificial neural network is like this. So this is the single most constituting unit for artificial neurons. The inputs are given, some weights are there. After that, there are some mathematical functions. It produces some outputs, and this is a network type of thing which at last gives the classes. If you are using it is a 2-class problem, so there will be benign and malicious software class. So your artificial neural network can classify a particular file into one of these two. So you can also use this artificial neural network. This is a very common and popular data mining tool. So these are the some basically labels. One is input layer, another is hidden layer, another is last is the output layer, and output layer gives us the class. We in a particular input file is belongs to which class. It is a benign class or malicious code class. This is the basic structure. Another important machine learning tool which is also used in malware analysis is the support vector machine. It is also a mathematical approach. The input of this model is that you have to give the feature that we have extracted, and after this we feed this to the support vector machine. This is the mathematical analysis, and this is the mathematical representation of the support vector machines. Basically, these are the two types of classes. Suppose let it be a benign class and it will be malicious class. The support vector machine, what does it do? It tries to draw a particular difference line that segregates these two classes perfectly. So during training phase, we try to find the equation of this line. Actually, it is a 2D. That's why we are seeing it as a line. Whenever you are using multiple features, it will be a hyperplane. So there we will be using, or we will be trying to estimate the parameters of those hyperplanes. That is our target in the training phase. Once the training is complete, we have got the definition of this or mathematical parameters of this hyperplane. We will be using those equations to solve the particular, whether a particular file is a benign or malicious. So with the features, we can compute that. Basically, there are two types of
Devabrata,
SVM
we
cases.
have
One is yes.
Devabrata, we have crossed the line, and this
Just 30 seconds. I'm just 30 seconds. Okay. After this SVM is complete, just another some two models are there. Random forest model is there, and another is the decision tree is there. After this, I'm just going to testing of your model. Once your model is ready, you have to test on the test data. For that, there are confusion metrics, and accuracy of the model can be evaluated. And when it is done, you are ready for deployment of the system. So thanks. So yeah, I just conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Devabrata. It was quite a long presentation, quite interesting.
Yeah.
There are few questions. Will you like to have it? Can you?
Oh, just I'll just okay. I'll just share my email ID, so I can take up all these questions and I'll give you the answers in details. So
actually, they have an exam at the course and program. They might have some few queries which are the general things. So that's why they are asking the questions. Otherwise, you may send them an email.